Welcome to another episode of The Evaluation Couch, the podcast where we talk about career growth and the field of evaluation. This is your host, Maria Montenegro. Imagine you complete college, you apply for 30 jobs, and you're rejected by all of them. You decide to apply to a fast food restaurant. There's 23 openings and 24 applicants, and you're the only one who doesn't receive an offer. This is the story of Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba. He is a business magnate, an investor, and a philanthropist, and also now one of the wealthiest men on earth. Because of this story, Jack Ma has a very interesting attitude towards failure. He thinks getting used to failure is a requirement to achieve success, because failure is part of being in the game. It is unavoidable. He also sees failures as opportunities to learn. He thinks you should learn about your failures as well as that of others, especially of those that you admire. This sounds very inspirational, but how can we actually shift our attitude towards failure, be it being rejected for a job or feeling lost during our job search process? How do we get to that point? And how do we get there without giving up and with a healthy mindset? We will be answering these questions in today's episode, which is part 2 of a 3-episode series around healthy job search mindset. In this episode, I will share practical things that you can do during your job search process to embrace failure, increase your grit, and increase your resilience. So we know that the job searching process is an unavoidable part of our career, and that even if you're a great candidate or the best candidate, you might not get that job. It is estimated that corporate jobs get about 250 applicants, and if you think about it, of those, only one person gets a job. That means that for every position advertised, there's a lot of people that are being rejected. Another thing that we want to keep in mind is that sometimes a rejection is a good thing. Sometimes when you go through the hiring process and you know more about the organization and you meet the people that you're actually going to be working with, you already can sense that this is probably not going to be a good fit. So those are some of the things that we know about how applying for jobs and securing jobs work. Now, I'm going to ask you to use that to really internalize that being rejected is part of the process. And to help you internalize that, I'm going to ask you that you build a logic model with me in your head around this. And if you're not an evaluator, don't worry, I will walk you through this process. So let's assume that your goal is to secure a specific job or a seniority level to grow your career. In order to get there, you need to apply for jobs. That is a requirement. So that is an activity that you need to do to achieve that goal. You need to submit applications or share your resume with someone that is hiring. And from that activity, there can be 2 immediate results or outputs that can come up. One is an invitation for an interview, and the other one is a rejection or silence. You can also be ghosted. This happens a lot. And if you're invited for an interview, you will either be invited for another round or offered a position, or you will be rejected, and so on. So if we acknowledge that in our logic model towards a new job or a better job, we have to go through the activity of applying for jobs. And one of the results is very likely going to be being rejected, but that this is a necessary step towards moving to the next result, then we can shift how we see those no's and those rejections or that silence as simply part of the process. And not even that, but actually proves that you are acting on the activity required to achieve your goal. So in a way, being rejected, hearing a no, or not hearing back is actually an indication that you are progressing towards your goal, because it means that you're still applying for jobs, you're still in the game, and you have not given up. I think this is what Jack Ma is talking about when he says failure is a requirement for success. You have to experience that failure to get to a success point. And I think the exact same thing applies to securing a job. Now, I know that there are some very rare instances where certain people land jobs through planned happenstance and connections. And actually, there's some people that have rarely had to apply for a job. And this is great, but I do want to note, this is not the norm. Okay, so now if you're still with me and you're internalizing this, that means that you will be rejected and you will hear no's throughout your career as long as you're still in the game. And that this is an indicator of progress towards your career goals. But also, it can be hard. It can be hard to be rejected. And we know that it's normal. So we will need to have grit and resilience to keep going, to overcome these rejections, to not take it personal, and to not give up. Because that is when we actually fail, when we give up. So first, we're going to talk about grit. Grit has been proven to be a determinant of success across different contexts and professions. And I'm leaving a great resource in the notes of this episode if you want to learn more about grit. Grit is basically having passion and perseverance. It is knowing what your end goal is. And despite of the challenges and despite of the rejections, just keeping at it until you achieve that. And there is still a lot of research going on to understand grit and how to cultivate it. But the one thing that we do know is that cultivating a growth mindset is a good way of increasing grit. So an actionable thing that you can do to increase grit during your job search process is to cultivate a growth mindset. There are so many ways in which you can do this. For example, you can view an application as an opportunity to learn about an organization and the specific work they do. You can also view a rejection as an opportunity to learn about how you're communicating your skills and your accomplishments. You can also see the whole job searching process as an opportunity to learn about yourself, about your strengths, about what you need right now, what your priorities are. I was having a conversation this week with a friend around job searching and next steps in her career. And one of the first things I asked was, what are you looking for? What are your priorities? And the conversation we had was so great, and it made me realize starting the job search process is such a great opportunity to check in with yourself and learn what it is that you need and you're looking for at the current stage of your life. And doing this intentionally, which we don't often take the time to do. A growth mindset can also be having curiosity and being willing to learn from others and the strategies that are working for them in securing jobs. Or it can be having an open mind and exploring different industries, different sectors, different types of organizations than what you were exploring so far. Another way to have a growth mindset is being open to assessing how you're doing and how you can improve. When you are in the job search process, it's very valuable to ask for advice, both from the people that are seeing your applications and are in hiring roles, as well as from people in your profession, in your network, your peers. In his book, Hidden Potential, Adam Grant talks about asking for advice instead of asking for feedback. He says that when you ask for feedback, what you get is focused on your past performance, and it can often result in unhelpful criticism. But in contrast, when you ask for advice, what you get is forward-focused, and it can be actionable. I was thinking about this concept when I was reading the book, and I actually remember I have two examples that 100% align. One time, I didn't get a position, and I asked for feedback. And one of the feedback that I received was that I did not maintain eye contact with the virtual panel. Very interesting feedback, not very helpful. In contrast, when I applied to one of my first jobs after my master's, I remember I had asked for advice from a friend that worked in that organization. And one of the things that she said was, this organization really likes when you show that your experience aligns with their values. So I recommend that your cover letter is organized with headings of each of their values. And that was very actionable, and it really helped me improve my application. Self-reflection can also be a powerful tool to help you identify opportunities and improve how you're doing your application, your interviewing, and even your negotiation process. Some questions that I like to ask myself when I am looking for a job are things like, how did I perform in this interview? How am I feeling after hearing a decision about this position? How prepared did I feel for this interview? What was one question that I excelled at? Or what was one question that I could have responded better given my experience and my skills? We have reviewed a few different ways in which you can cultivate a growth mindset. If having a growth mindset is not something that comes naturally for you, one thing that I found that is very helpful is to do journaling with specific prompts. So if you're having challenges with this, I encourage you to try journaling the answers to questions such as these ones. What can I learn from this application experience? What skill gaps have I identified through this experience that I can grow? What strengths have I identified after this application? Now, grit is going to keep you in the game, especially during long-term periods of job searching, which can occur, especially when the job market conditions are not favorable for people looking for jobs, when there's a lot of competition, when there's a recession, and so on. But a component of grit that is actually going to help you bounce back after a job rejection is resilience. Resilience is going to help you get over specific rejections, especially after a rejection that really hurts. Because maybe you thought this was your dream job, you were the best candidate. There are generally 3 factors that are going to play a role in determining whether we demonstrate resilience and can bounce back after facing challenges and moments of adversity. And those are individual factors, family factors, and community factors. Individual factors are, of course, about ourselves, how we're regulating our emotions, our self-image, what we're saying to ourselves, and that inner dialogue that goes on when we receive a rejection. So the first thing that I would like to say for you to start working on this is, first of all, accepting what you're feeling. Remembering that you're not alone in this. Feeling hurt by a job rejection is normal, and many of us have been through this. I also want you to remember that receiving a rejection is normal. Remember the beginning of this episode, it is part of the process. And lastly, you'll have to practice self-compassion. Self-compassion is really about the inner dialogue and the things that you are telling yourself as you're trying to make sense and process this event. And changing our inner dialogue is something that no one teaches us how to do. I didn't learn this in school. I didn't learn it in university. I don't know why they don't teach us these basic life skills, but they should. Luckily, there are techniques that you can try, and this is totally something we can work on. I personally find it very helpful to do this while journaling, but you can try whatever works for you. You can reflect this and have these thoughts in your mind. You can read them out loud, whatever works. So the first thing that you're going to do when you identify that you are having a negative dialogue is you're going to ask yourself if you have any evidence for the thoughts that you're having. Let's assume that I've been applying for a lot of jobs and I've been rejected, and I noticed that I am having the thought and telling myself that I will never find a better job in evaluation without a PhD. And I know that there's some listeners that can probably relate to this inner dialogue. So I would ask myself what evidence I have to support this thought. I applied for a few positions and I have been rejected by all of them. I actually saw on LinkedIn who was hired into that role, and I noticed that they had a PhD. But I don't really know the qualifications of the candidates that got all the other jobs that I applied to and that I was also rejected to. So, no, I don't really have the full evidence to support this thought. And then a follow-up question that you can ask yourself is, what can you do to validate or challenge this thought? So following my example, I can connect with diverse mentors. So I would want to make sure that I connect with mentors that have a PhD and also some that don't have a PhD, and ask them for their opinion. What do they think is the possibility of me finding the type of job I want without a PhD? I could also find similar companies and learn who in those companies is in similar positions. I can reach out, I can ask them about their journeys, their backgrounds, and ask for their opinion as well. So going through this process, you're not only digesting and challenging the negative thought, but you're also creating a plan to fully challenge it and find evidence against it, if it is actually a thought that is not true. The second thing that I'm going to suggest that you do if you're finding yourself having negative thoughts is that whatever the event was, let's say you're rejected from your dream job, I'm going to ask you that you role play and you assume that this is happening to your best friend, to your sister, or even to your mom, to whoever it is in your life that comes to mind that you really love. What would you say to them? What would you actually say to them if they came to you and shared this terrible news about being rejected by their dream company? The goal of this exercise is that you talk to yourself in the same way that you would talk to someone that you really love. And chances are that when you're talking to someone you really love, you have a much more positive view on the issue. And you're able to highlight their strengths and why they're so valuable, in spite of the rejection they just received. The goal is to help you become your best friend. Another very important strategy to build your resilience is to seek support. And this can be seeking support from people in your network, as well as seeking support from mental health professionals. If you have been following my podcast for a while, you probably have heard a story I had in a low point in my career in terms of my mental health, where I actually reached out and received supports from a psychologist that focused on career development. And receiving this specialized support was extremely helpful. If you're going through a process of job searching, applying for jobs, and you haven't heard good news in a while, make sure that you're still celebrating small wins. This can look like submitting an application that you're very proud of, or answering an interview question in a way that clearly impresses people in the interview panel, or even just going to an interview and having a really great conversation that reminded you of why you're passionate about the work that you're doing. And now, the last thing that I'm going to recommend when thinking about the individual factors that support your resilience is that you make sure that you're anticipating the impacts that a long period of job search can have on your mental health. And you make sure that you're scheduling breaks and you're keeping your lifestyle balanced so that you're fulfilling other needs that you have as well. This includes socializing, self-care, taking care of your body. My recommendation is that you do not use self-care or things that you enjoy as a reward for something else. So having statements with yourself, once I get a job, then I can give myself this and this. Instead, I'm going to suggest that you prioritize self-care in whatever way is appropriate and affordable to you. Because this will help your mood, it will help your energy. And all of this is going to improve how you perform in the job search process as well. It will also help with your motivation. If you're not really sure how you can integrate self-care into your daily routine and what that looks like, one suggestion I have is that over the next few days, you ask yourself, you can journal as well if you want, what do I need today? As you get used to listening to your body, to identifying where your emotional state is, you might come up with ideas of things that you could do to bring more balance and self-care into your life. Now, the second factor to support your resiliency is having supportive relationships and a stable environment. An important aspect during our job search process that I think we don't often think about is psychological safety. And basically, this means, are you surrounded and are you in an environment where it is okay for you to take risks and where being rejected for a job is not going to be received with judgment? Are your relationships being supportive? And is your home an environment that is surrounding you for most of the time, an environment that is recharging you rather than one that is draining you? Now, I'm fully aware that sometimes we have no choice, and that despite people's best intentions, they're not providing a supportive environment for us. I'm not suggesting that you end important relationships, that you move cities, that you leave your homes. But being aware of what it is that is surrounding you and how it's making you feel can be an indicator of whether perhaps you need more self-care, or whether you maybe need to stretch your relationships and create pockets of psychological safety to support you through this process. One idea that I really like embracing in my life is that not everyone is for everything. Not every friend is a friend for everything. So try to identify who are the people in your life that can provide a psychologically safe environment for you during this process. And this also links a lot to the importance of the third factor, which is community and accessing systems of support. I have learned that it's becoming more popular for people to create support circles, accountability groups, or networks of people that are applying for jobs. The intention is that there's a group of 4 to 6 people. Everyone is sharing their experiences, everything from where they're finding job postings, providing advice and tips, and providing feedback on their applications, sharing about new opportunities that others might be interested in. The idea is this is a safe space for people to learn together and support each other in an environment where people get it because they're going through a similar experience. Having positive reinforcement, receiving constructive feedback, and being in a nurturing environment can be a game changer in terms of your resiliency and your mental health. So especially if you're finding that you need to improve the environment that is currently surrounding you, consider creating a system of support, maybe focused on your specific profession or a specific sector you're interested in, maybe with people that you don't even know. Leverage social media, make connections, and start creating these circles. So to sum up this episode, we've talked about 3 things that are key to making sure you keep a healthy mindset during the job search process. And they are changing how you see failure, increasing your grit, and increasing your resilience. There is one last thing, though, that you can do to help you have a healthy mindset. And I think working on this is not only going to help you navigate rejections, but it's actually also going to strengthen your performance when you're applying for jobs. It's going to help you filter and identify the opportunities that are aligned with your values, with your needs, and with your objectives. And it's even going to help you networking. Doing this will increase your identity as a professional. And this is to reconnect with your why, to be clear on your story and what it is that you're bringing to the table. And this is going to be the topic of our 3rd episode.